Welcome to Parenthood Bites, the podcast where we explore life as a parent in tech. I'm your host, Chow, and I have over 15 years of experience in tech, and I'm also currently working as a career coach. I'm the proud mother of 3 incredible boys. In each episode, we have an inspiring guest who will share their remarkable story. You'll find their wisdom and insights both relatable and enriching, because after all, we're all in this parenting journey together. So grab your favorite drink, get cozy, and let's dive into today's episode. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 63 of Parenthood Bites. We're here today with Len, who is in episode 48, and JD, who is in episode 40. And they're here to talk to us about specific topics. Today, we're going to talk about how we help kids pursue their interests and passions. And if you remember, JD and Len both have adult kids. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about how old are your kids, just so people can refresh their memory a little bit?
Go ahead, Len.
No, you go ahead. You start.
Jesus, it's going to take forever if we keep passing back and forth. So yes, I have 3 children. By the way, thank you for inviting us once again. Hopefully this will go really well, although hopefully Len and I don't deviate too much from the plan here. So we'll keep it as focused as we can.
Yeah, and it's usually my fault, so I'll just admit to that now.
Yeah, which he's already done.
It's okay. I'm counting on it.
Which he's already done by not taking the first question. So to answer yes, I have 3 children. One is 32, my oldest, my daughter. And then I have my 2 sons who are 27 and 25.
And I have 3 sons, 27, about to turn 25 in February, and one just turned 22. I think we talked about it in a previous episode, but JD and I have known each other since the 4th grade. We went through elementary school together. Then we had a year where our freshman year, we went to different high schools. And
Which Len got kicked out of the high school, by the way.
Was that?
Len got kicked out of high school. Was told to leave.
Kicked out. I just didn't get.
You got kicked out. You're kicked out.
No.
Okay.
No, I was really leaving.
Fair enough.
And I just didn't really have a choice to come back at a certain point.
Anyway, continue. Don't drag on.
We don't. That's not relevant.
But then you were able to come back after that year.
It's a different high school. Yeah, we both went to private high schools our freshman year, and then our sophomore year. It was funny because I kind of was going to go back to my high school and kind of didn't, and then I couldn't. Shut up. And then it was funny because on the first day, school had already started. And so some of these people I had known since first grade, but didn't really know them very well anymore. And everybody's in their groups and everything. So going into the office, right when I walk in, he's sitting in there. So it's kind of like a relief that we're both kind of like brand new to the school and we knew each other. Since then,
Yeah, since then we've been a part of each other's lives pretty much the whole time.
We've been pretty much
both best men at each other's weddings, godparents to the children.
Wives and godmothers to our other children. So yeah, we're pretty intertwined.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
Yeah, we couldn't not be friends if we wanted to. It wouldn't be allowed. We wouldn't have a choice. We'd be overridden by our wives and our kids. Like, no, you guys just deal with it.
And so your wives and your kids are also really good friends as well?
Oh yeah, the kids grew up together.
That's so cool.
My daughter being the oldest really helped early on playing with the boys because they're all boys since then, right?
Yeah.
Not a single girl after that, at least between the 2 of us. So she's always been kind of the older sister for them, but also helped out when she was younger. We did trips together. We did events together. They pretty much grown up around each other.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask, did she help babysit and stuff? I feel like, I don't know, girls are very nurturing and they take care of it. I was like, oh, I wish my oldest was a girl that could help take care of, but it's okay. My son also helps.
Well, they are different. That is very true. But yes, I mean, she helped out. I don't know if she ever actually babysit them per se, probably because whenever we were together, it was probably just all of us as a group anyway. So there was never really that opportunity. But yeah, she'd help take care of her own godson is his youngest son.
Yeah.
And so she would take care of him when he was like a baby and whatnot.
It was also, she tried to keep the reins on them from doing boy things. So she was like our extension of when we were distracted with other things. She would always jump in. She was also the oldest of that whole generation of our kids. So like even JD sister-in-law, her kids, Tina was the oldest. So she always had that mothering role, let's just say.
Oh, that's so awesome. It's so awesome to have her to really cool. And you can trust her. And that's really, really awesome. So they must have all really, really close relationship.
They do. I mean, when they get together, they're not together as much anymore, obviously, because they've all split. Like I have 2 of mine live out here in Las Vegas, and then the third is back in the Bay Area now. So yeah, as they've gotten older, they went to colleges and whatnot. The time we spend together has been more or has lessened. But when they do get together, it's like anything, like you're seeing your cousins again after a year or something. It's like, okay, and you just have fun and start joking around and doing your usual stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think we talked about this last time as well, but also not only have you guys gone to school together, but you also work together in several jobs, right? Probably up until...
Way too many jobs.
We have. We can talk about just the tech only. We don't have to go into the retail stuff that we did.
Yeah. Well, actually, even our retail was kind of tech.
It was gaming.
Wait, you guys did retail jobs together too?
We worked at a gaming retailer.
Yeah, so I'll try and give a quick high level because then I'll drag on.
I don't remember.
So when we were like high school, so we were 16 or something like that, 15 or 16, we worked at a restaurant. That was our first place working together, was a restaurant. For those in the Bay Area who might know this or are listening and remember it, there used to be a place called Tunes by Sarah Monty. It was an ice cream parlor restaurant. Prior to that, it was called Farrell's. So Farrell's is where we worked. So that was where we first worked together. Then eventually worked in the mall. We worked at a newsstand called News Stop, which is where we sold comics, magazines, and cigarettes and all that good stuff. And so, of course, all this takes place in Sarah Monty. And then we worked at a place called Captron, which was Capcom's owned sort of stores that they were doing at the time. And so video game stores. So from that standpoint, we worked there selling video games, PC games, PC software, all that stuff. So that was kind of our time together there. And then after that, we went into the more larger corporate world, I guess, so to speak. Went to work for Sony PlayStation. I think we both spent at least 10 years there at the company.
Yeah, almost 10. And
we worked together, customer service for a while as part of I led the technical team, and Len, I don't know what Len did. And then...
Yeah, right. I was the admin for the CRM solution.
Yeah, that's right. He just handed out the free games to people who complained, shipped them out.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, that too. That was my side job.
That wasn't my side job. That was your real job. What are you talking about? So that was it. And then we worked at IGN, which is where we met you.
Yeah.
So we worked there. I worked there for almost 5 years. And then after that, I think Walmart's just Walmart, right? Yeah. And Walmart recently laid me off because I wouldn't move back to the Bay.
Well,
so I'm no longer working with Len again.
He really didn't want to work with me anymore. That's what it really was. He would have moved back if I wasn't working there. But
that was the thing, right? It wasn't about return to office.
Yeah, legit. Yeah, I can't work with this guy anymore. This is like
until the next job opportunity.
Right, until we cross again.
So you worked together. You said retail. Was that like in your teenage years? Teenage, college?
Yeah, early years. Yeah,
college. Yeah, more college. Yeah.
Cool. So
really, you didn't work in high school in retail?
Not really.
You didn't work at News Stop?
I did work at News Stop. Yeah.
You did work at retail.
I did. Okay, wait, is a newsstand retail?
Yes, it is.
Because you're selling stuff. Newspapers, right?
Really? Is it really? Okay, fine. Okay, you guys are both gay enough. Fine, that's retail.
Thank you. All right, moving on.
I would blame that. If John didn't say that I would say no, I would just argue with him.
I mean, I don't know. I thought like if you just sell something for money, then that's retail.
I guess. Yeah. You're probably. I'll say
you're not wrong. That is the correct definition of it. In that sense, within a mall,
really?
That's retail.
You just say that.
I am just saying that, but that's the correct definition.
Okay.
So,
we'll go with that.
Did your kids also work in their high school, college years as well?
So, real quick for myself, my daughter, yes, she did in her high school years. She worked at a restaurant, and even in college, she worked at at least for when she went to LMU, she worked the daycare place on campus as well. So she did a couple things there. My oldest son, not during high school, didn't have a job. No, because he was more focused on the athletics and everything else going on at that time. It was making it difficult. And same with my youngest. I think if anything else, my oldest son got a job out of high school where he worked actually down at the airport, working the graveyard shifts for United or something like that, the freight system out there to load everything up. And my youngest, during college, he did do side work for a cousin of ours as a developer. So he did have a job in that case. And once he graduated, he moved on to something else.
None of mine worked in high school either. I mean, the closest they did to going to private school was they did community service. That's the closest they had to a job. And I think similar to when we were in high school, it was just like a normal thing. But nowadays, it's not that normal anymore. I think when you see high schoolers don't work as much, like you just don't see them out there. There's also not as many opportunities as it was, back in the 80s and even 90s. But yeah, it wasn't until college, like either working on campus or a little bit outside that they actually started working. And even then it wasn't anything major. It was really just for side money.
Right.
for things like that, for their own stuff. But yeah, I think it's just totally different now than when we were growing up. Not saying that we actually went through college well, but JD and I, we worked pretty much full time during college. And sometimes it reflected on our grades, but I'm not sure if that was related to work or just us in general at that time too.
Well, yeah. I mean, first year of college was definitely related to me and yourself.
Yeah.
We didn't show up. So that was poor. But yeah, I 100% agree. The mindset today, at least for our standpoint, because I'm sure there's plenty of high schoolers out there who are working jobs, and I've seen it before that they're working jobs. But to your point, like, I don't know if it's as profusely as it has been in the past. Like, there are less people probably doing it because there's the types of jobs are starting to go away. Malls are closing down, everywhere. Yeah. So the easier retail jobs, you got a bunch of Starbucks. So if you want to be baristas, you can.
Fast food for us back then, it was all our age. It was all like 90% of the people that worked there were high schoolers.
Right.
And now you never see high schoolers working, especially in California with the minimum wage increase. But that's a good point about the mall. I didn't even think about that because, like he highlighted earlier, all our jobs was related to the mall until we got out of college.
Yeah. No, that's a great point because I even think about like the food court in the mall over here. There's like 2 restaurants in there. Everything else is closed. So back then that would have been filled with like high school kids. Yeah. And I was curious because like, my oldest is in high school and he's in 9th grade and we're already like, well, we haven't, but his friends are already like, oh, we got to start thinking about college. And I was like, oh crap, I got to talk to him about that. But then I realized like there's so many more requirements I feel than when we were applying for college. So I feel like even if they wanted to work, there's almost no time between homework and all the community service and the club. How did you help your kids with juggling all of that?
Well, I'll say I know JD had the same thing was with sports. Nowadays it makes it almost impossible to work with it.
Yeah.
It's already hard enough without sports, to your point, that, and especially when the focus more now. And in high school, there was, you had 10% of the student body was really focused on going to college, or not so much going to college, but actually trying to go to a good college. And like, that was their primary focus. Where it just seems nowadays like that focus is, like you said, at freshman year. So I think the focus of how many students are trying to look for college now is totally different. But, back then, working and playing a sport or two or doing extracurricular or two here and there was kind of the norm. Nowadays, it's like every waking moment isn't focused on going to colleges that you want to. Your chances are pretty low to begin with. But I think now it seems like it's all encompassing. Even before high school, you start seeing people in 8th grade. Okay, what should I start doing now for college?
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah, I see middle schoolers doing community service already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, as far as preparing them, to Len's point, yeah, sports was a big thing. I also think it comes down to the child, right? So in this case, like I knew my daughter was driven, wanted best grades possible, didn't like getting bad grades, right? So mentally, that was her focus, was to make sure she had the best grades possible. She did enjoy talking to people. She was very social. So she would get out there. She'd play her sports, whether it was basketball or tennis, but she'd be active in other things because, like anything for college, it's not about grades anymore, right? Because they have plenty of people who can get grades. It's more about what you can offer the school outside of that. Like, what do you bring personally? Whether it's community service hours, that's great, but like, what do you bring personally? Like, what have you done that's unique enough in some cases? I will say this too, also, when it comes to colleges, there are a lot of colleges out there, like a lot. And a lot of people focus on just the top 50, right? And you can go to college anyway. Sometimes it becomes a stigma of, I went to this college, is better than your college. Whether it's true or not, it's irrelevant. I went to Cal or I went to Stanford, just using the local colleges there. But, with my son.
Yep, or the parent or the student, though.
Well, it's a combo, right? I
think I've seen over the years, I think a lot of it is the parent or a projection of the parent.
Well, we've seen that. Now, I've seen that with friends in the past. Myself, I've seen that with family and others who've done that. My approach has been different. Like, I want the kids to do well. And like I said, each kid's different. Like my daughter, great. My youngest son, his goal was always to beat his sister. So he wanted to get to more college acceptances. He wanted to get a faster turnaround time for graduation. My middle son, like a lot of middle children, it's more about, you do what you can. And sometimes it's just not what you want. Like, he didn't want to go to college initially. And as I told him, you don't have to. You got to get a job because you can't live in this world without something, right? Like, you have to have a job if you're not doing college. But in the end, to your point, I'm like, yes, sometimes it's driven by what people in their own mind as a parent thinks they should go to. And I was more like, look, find the colleges you want, look at them all. What are you interested in first and foremost? Because that's the colleges you want to look for. Like, my son is into technology. He wanted to do computers. He's grown up around them his whole life with me. And so for him, he wanted to focus on schools that gave great computer programs. And he ended up going to a school I'd never heard of out in the East Coast called Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. So RPI for short. And it's one of the top ones out there next to like MIT. So he found it, and he didn't look at just, like we looked at some of the big colleges too, but in the end, he found what made sense for him. And so sometimes you have to dig a little deeper and find those places. But yeah, I've seen a lot of times the challenge was trying not to get them just to focus on, I need to get into Cal or Stanford or something like that. It's like, sure, if that's the school you really want, fine. But in the end, that's not what's required. What's required is if you want to go to college, find what fits what you're trying to do and then look for those.
I say, like with my middle son, he was driven to go to Cal. And part of that was because his mom went there. And even though she was fine with him not going there, but I think he put it on himself that that's where he wanted to go. But also, even to that point, I think some of it for him was he wanted that name. I think it was important to him. And, I think when he got accepted to everywhere but Cal, even UCLA, Irvine, and Davis. No, he didn't get accepted to UCLA, but he got accepted to Irvine and Davis. And he wasn't going to go to Irvine. But I think there was a little bit of disappointment that he didn't get into Cal. And so he made the decision to go to a JC to be able to do the transfer to get into Cal. And at first, he was partially, and he admits it now, but it was also because his girlfriend got into Cal and he was a little nervous about that. And she was projecting on him, like didn't want him going to Irvine and that type of thing. But I think part of it was, it was a little bit that that's what he wanted. And I don't like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of counter to what JD was saying, but it's also, I'm like, if that's the school you want to go to, then don't just settle for Irvine. The irony is that when he went through to do the transfer, he applied to all four of those again. And he got accepted all four, nice. So he rejected Irvine twice. So, yeah, it was just it's a kind of ongoing joke when his younger brother was going to apply there that they would reject him because
they recognize the last name.
No more of you guys. Yeah, they recognize his name. But for my oldest son, he went to San Jose State for mechanical engineering, and he almost went to Santa. But the reason why he ended up going to San Jose State was because two of his closest friends were going there, and he knew really nobody going to Santa Cruz at that time. And for him, kind of the opposite of like Christina, he's an introvert, and he's very self-conscious, and so incredibly smart. But it's just his personality is not as outgoing, and he decided to go to San Jose State because he would felt more comfortable. I think it was the right decision. In the long run, I think it benefited him to go there because he's still friends with them, a few years after graduation and everything. But I think the comfort level for him was a major reason for him to do. So yeah, there's always different reasons. You just have to look at it, be objective, to your child's perspective and what works best for them.
It sounds like just various factors for different kids, but kind of finding what that is for that child and then kind of helping them explore that further.
Right.
I was curious, when your son transferred to Cal from community college, did he have a counselor to help him guide him through that? Yes. Like, I think about that. I'm like, I don't know how to navigate. Like, what resources did he use to navigate?
So first of all, it was also during COVID. It was it 22 or 23 when he transferred? I think it was 22 when he transferred. But anyway, yeah, so it was right still in the middle of COVID. There still was a lot of restrictions. Most of the classes were remote. They had to get tested like every 2 weeks. But so yeah, the resources were limited, but Cal is also like that. They put a lot of the onus on the kids. And so I'm not sure if it's like more of a philosophy or a resource thing or whatever, but there really isn't any. And he was actually going through a hard time because he broke up with his girlfriend. So he was already like that and shaken up. So yeah, that first semester, good thing is that his roommate that he got into was just had a friend group and they accepted him. And so it made it a lot easier. But yeah, they didn't it was pretty challenging that first semester. It was, he didn't know if he was going to make it, to be honest. And I think, it was, again, his personality. That's the other thing about the school that I told him about Berkeley was Berkeley, you can only go there 4.5 years, like in terms of your total units. Like if you can't be a lifetime student. And it was that way when my wife went there, is that you get kicked out. Yeah, there's a cutoff of, I think it's how many units equal to 4.5 years.
Is that specific to Berkeley?
That's specific to Berkeley.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Curious about the Cal system?
Yeah, I think it's just Berkeley that does it.
That's why nobody likes Berkeley.
But yeah, there's a cutoff where they don't let you stay there past a certain amount of units. And my wife went through the same thing. And so at a certain point, because again, he's not exactly the most driven. He was driven to want to do it, but keeping that focus, unfortunately, gets up more for me than his mom.
He's a Division I athlete, by the way.
He was technically a Division I athlete. He played esports.
Very cool.
No,
esports was a Division I.
That's considered. He was considered.
Really?
He was on Cal's esports team for Overwatch. If you know the game Overwatch, he's
wow.
So there's different avenues in. You don't have to be athletically doing anything anymore. Now they'll just throw esports as an athletic
It's a sport.
Don't let my kids hear that.
That's the term sport in it. I agree. It says sport in it.
Yeah.
So that by default somehow funnels it in there. So he still
has a uniform that, is for Kelly.
He's a Division I athlete. I just want to point that out.
Division I athlete. Yeah, that to me is.
That is so cool.
Yeah, good.
It's like all the video game playing paid off, right?
Yeah. See, that's where our sons start giving each other grief about stuff like that. They make fun of each other for that stuff.
That's cool. So did you help them pick what majors they what directions they wanted to go? Did you help them navigate that?
No, not for mine, right? So my daughter, she knew she wanted to be a doctor. And so she knew she wanted to focus on medicine and go that route. So she focused all of her learning for her bachelor's in that area and then went on to get her doctorate later on. It's where she went to Creighton University out in Nebraska. So she spent about 8 years, obviously, of schooling to get that done. So she pretty much knew what she wanted. My youngest knew he wanted to go into technology. And so I don't even know what the name of his degree is because nowadays there's some unique long names that they come up with specific on the computer side. But he changed a couple times just his focus of majors, where it was going to be just straight engineering, and then it went to this computer group, whatever it's called.
Really, your son, who cares what he actually does?
I don't know. And people ask me, I should probably learn. I'm not going to, though. I'll be honest with you right now. I'm not going. I'm too old. I'm too old to remember these things. And then my middle son actually, here we go with the middle child again. Similar to Lens, went the same path. So he didn't go initially to college. He wanted to take some time aside. He did go to junior college first. When he did decide to do it, he went to junior college first, got his, basics done there, and then went to LMU down in Los Angeles. And he knew going into that at that point what his focus was. It's going to be finance. So that's where data analytics and things along those lines is where he focused on. So yeah, I'd say realistically, no, it's just more about helping them, especially when they're debating between continuing a major or not, how to talk through it to make sure they're making the right decision, because kids will change. Like they'll go into college with this expectation in year one, like I'm going to do this. By year 3, they're like, no, I've switched. I'm going this route. And that's almost always going to happen. From my standpoint, it was more about just when they start talking about it, I was like, okay, well, what is still your passion, and make sure it aligns with it. And that was just to make sure they were making the right decision for themselves and not because others were doing it. Let's do it too, right? Or it's the easiest.
I think for mine, it was similar type thing. I mean, it all revolved around STEM just because, and I think, people always talk about like, do what you love, your passion. My philosophy or talking with them as they got older was, I always looked at it like, find out what you're good at and then go that route. Because, I mean, I think it's just easier with that one, because if it's a core competency, it just kind of aligns with who you are. And I think when you look at like all my kids were top math students in their class. And my oldest has 3 mechanical engineering with minors in physics and computer science, and then applied math for the middle son. And the youngest is looking at going trade route outside of school, but if he did, he would go back into an engineering field. But part of that is because they've always been good at math. So I think it's always the type of thing where if you have a competency in it, it also kind of makes it easier. It makes you maybe not enjoy it, but it just aligns with who you are as a person. I think if you look at just looking at what JD's kids and knowing them, like with their career path, it makes sense to me. It aligns with who they are. And again, it's their personalities. I think like when you look at my sons when it comes to math, they're not going to be, I can't see them in a humanity. I can't see them in a social science type setting because it's just not who they are. So I think that's kind of like when people talk about the passion, I think there's a few facets that align with it. And for mine, it was, like I said, it was always obvious that they weren't going to go engineering. It was never anything I had to even push. I mean, I think we nurture it. I think like JD brought up earlier, with his youngest son, he aligned with him when it came to that type of stuff. And even with JD's dad, they had projects that him and his grandfather did together. That was more of a engineering building stuff. So I also think it's just, just that whole thing with your kid's personality and who they are and let them go that route. But yeah, I don't think and I know how, even though he pushed, especially his middle son in sports way too much, but I think academically, yeah, I think the hard part is that like when we look at the motivation part, I think that's the hardest part, is keeping them on track. Like he said, Tina, she was just set and go. He didn't have to do anything. That was just her personality from the get-go. And then, of course, Luke is motivated. His youngest was motivated to be the sister. My sons, unfortunately, their mom graduated valedictorian and went to Berkeley, and then they all got their study habits and unfortunately. So keeping them focused I think that was the bigger challenge for us, was keeping them on track, going through and actually, keeping up with their grades and then, dealing with the times where they did fall short. I think that's the harder, is when they try something and they put themselves out there to maybe do something out of their comfort zone and it doesn't work. That's the harder. I can just say, like, well, all of a sudden, he skipped Honors Math 1 and got the math award, but he wanted to try AP World History, and he failed miserably at it. I mean, we got to transfer him out of that class into the basic, and kind of like dealing with that type of stuff. I think it's the harder part. It's easy when everything's aligned and they kind of are doing what they want to do, but in high school, especially elementary school, it doesn't always work out that way.
Right.
So I think those are the bigger challenges of that. It's not the easy path that we know that they're going to go, but other stuff that they have to deal with to get there.
So what do you do to help keep them on track and make sure that they don't get crushed by some of those things?
I think the one thing that became hard for us was, especially in high school, their mom had a hard time relating to them. And again, because she was that student, she was the one who, I saw her notes from college and I'm like, it's impossible. You did not do these. She had the perfect indents and all that type of stuff. And she had like page after page after page of it. And so there's just a lot of the things that she couldn't understand. But I think also as a parent, sometimes you have to be vulnerable with, and they knew my challenges. I didn't say it to be like, oh, I was cool, I didn't care. I'm like, no, I had the same challenges that they did. So they knew that it wasn't just them being alone, that I can relate to them. And I would kind of just show them that, I understood what they're going through. It didn't mean that I was okay with it, which is kind of that balancing point. You want to be able to relate to them and have them trust you, but you also have to let them know that, yeah, these are the repercussions that happened for me. And, I don't want to see it happen with you. So I think for me, it was, being able to relate to them and show them that, I wasn't perfect. And again, not to make it into something where you're relieving of any responsibility. But I think for them, just knowing that it's just not them. I think that's one of the hardest things is, especially with a kid, they have that identity of, oh, I suck, or that type of thing, or I'm not good enough. And it's like, yeah, some areas you're not going to be good enough. And I think a lot of parents avoid that type of conversation. It's like, no, you aren't good at this. You're not good at creative writing. Fine, don't do it. Try to just get the C and move on from it. If you get the C, you pass the class, you can move on. But, sometimes, that's the one thing is, also just letting your kids know that it's okay not to be, you can be below average in something. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is high achiever in everything they do. Lack somewhere. So I think trying to find that balance is a big thing.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you said in that sense too. And the one thing I would though add to this is even after all that, still doesn't matter, right? Because in the end, it's going to come down to them. Like they have to still take that lesson or that discussion and realize there's value behind it. And sometimes they will. A lot of times they won't. I mean, it's like anything in life. We have to learn from our mistakes. And sometimes you have to let them go through and make those mistakes. We can't hide them from the realities. We have to let them go through those mistakes. That's the only way they'll learn. But being there, to Len's point, like even for myself, I was a procrastinator in high school. Could I have easily done perfectly fine? Yes. I mean, I could have, but I was a procrastinator. And my boys were similar. So I don't know if this is a boys thing, by the way. We're setting a trend here because my daughter never had a problem with procrastinating.
It leads to it, though. It does lean that way.
And his wife clearly had no problems at all. So it's a male thing. And, you have some sons there. So
it does lean that way. There are some boys. There's always, I think in general,
some of it will be just, you'll see yourself in them in a lot of cases, to Len's point. I've seen where my sons would struggle. Sometimes my middle son a bit more because he fits more in my mold than even my youngest when it comes to just how I've gone through, dealing with things in life and stuff in general. But yeah, in the end, it comes down to, you just need to be there, to Len's point. Be there, offer them experiences that you've experienced yourself. Like, yeah, I struggled here too. And look where I'm at. And it gives them at least some hope. They're like, hey, yeah, what other people are doing, because they just need to know other people struggle this too. They just assume it's all them and it's no one else. And so helping them understand that you're not the only person in this world who deals with this. This happens to a lot of people. And if you can even reference, and I've done things where I've referenced former leaders or famous people from the past to show that they struggled too. They had learning disabilities. They had these sort of things. Like that didn't stop them. They had to just figure out how to work through it and with it, and then they could continue on in their life. So yeah, that's what you try to do with your kids, is just help, be there. You push them as much as you can. In the end, they're going to be the ones who have to do the work. But yeah, and sometimes letting them fail is helpful because then they at least learn from that. But in the end, even for my kids, is they still push through. They either solve what they needed to, and they found out who they were more. So, and they'll continue to learn that, obviously, as we get older. And that's how, it helps to keep the kids kind of motivated to go forward.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something I hear from parents with older kids, is like letting them fail, being okay, like letting go. Like you want to go and grab them and not let them, but it's like, no, they have to learn, right? Because if you pick them up, they won't know how to stand up on their own, right? And I think that's something I'm trying to do more and more of every day. Like, speaking of procrastinating, last night, my son was up late doing his project. Oh, how long did you have to work on it? Oh, he's like, my friend finished it 3 weeks ago. I'm like, okay. And we're doing it right now. And I'm helping him. And me thinking back to when I was doing projects, I'm like a perfectionist, right? I'm like, oh, you should do it like this, like this. And he's like, no, it's fine. And I had to step back and be like,
exactly.
okay, this is not my project. This is yours. If you're okay with that, I guess I should be. But I think somehow, like, me being there, he was just like, fine, I guess I'll make it that much better. I guess I'll spend more time on it. But I was trying not to influence as much and let him be okay with what he had. But yeah, I do hear the...
It's hard to not project. That's the hardest thing, is not to project.
Yeah, I had to catch myself and be like, no. This is not my project. Let him do it the way he wants to.
Or do the, well, let me just do it, is the other part. You know, it's like I remember when my middle son was playing football, but he was in AP history, helping him with history. And I'm like, it was like 11 o'clock at night, you know, helping him kind of go through it so I can paraphrase some of the stuff. Because I was a history major. So I remembered all the stuff and I'm just going through it. And it was just so tempting just to say, just write this down. Just write down what I'm telling you. But I'm like, but no, it's still his work. So yeah, it's hard. It's like, you know, you could do it, but sometimes you just have to let it go.
Yeah, you feed them enough to give them a starting point when they struggle. But that's it, yeah. Yeah, what you said is exactly true, Joe. It's the same thing. Like, you go in, you help them, and they're like, yeah, this looks good. Really?
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah. And then I'm like, wait, no. Keep my mouth shut.
Like, okay.
If he gets a bad grade, then he'll know. If he gets a good grade.
You sure you don't want to add this here? Or maybe think about this? It's like, no, I'm good. Okay.
I'm good. I can go play Brawl Stars now. Okay, I guess. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, I finished what I was supposed to. I'm moving on to my games.
Yeah. So I guess like the last thing I want to ask was just, what advice would you give someone else like me who has 3 young kids? You having gone through young kids, now they're adults, what advice would you give me?
The only thing I would say that I feel is important that people don't necessarily do because they just let the kids decide is push them to try things, right? Whether it's sports, dancing, I don't know, have them try things. Like, a lot of kids will just want to just sit back and just do nothing at home or focus on games or whatever. And again, as you know, Len's son was a D1 athlete because of gaming.
So awesome.
So gaming isn't necessarily a bad thing. So I'm not saying that's the issue, but I think it's good to push them. They have to get out of their comfort zone. It's easy for us to become very antisocial, even more so today, and using just screens. So with kids, it's good to try swimming, anything, just have even every summer a camp or something. Like, keep them trying different things. That way, at least they now have enough of a vision of what's out there to hopefully help them make a decision. Like, I really enjoy doing this more, and this is kind of where I want to go to. So that's what I would suggest.
Love that.
I say along those lines, also knowing when to stop. Like, I think that a lot of people get stuck into certain paths with that type of stuff. I mean, a good example, like with JD's daughter, Tina, she played basketball, and then at a certain point, she just moved on from it. I think there's a lot that we saw, and I'm probably more related to what I've seen outside of my kids, but people sticking with one thing and trying to force it. And either it's a parent trying to force it or the kid wanting to force it, or for whatever reason, instead of just, like you said, exploring new things, because you don't know what you're going to find. Like, you saw it, basketball was a huge thing at my kids' elementary school. They get to high school and then they find out, what, somebody 5'10" is just, it's just not tall enough, or 5'7" is not tall enough for basketball at the high school level. And then they try another sport like volleyball or something, and then they end up falling in love with it. But if they never kind of gave up one sport to try this other one, they never would have experienced that. And I think even now, one of the things we noticed, even with sports, it's like everybody kind of like aligns with sports, but I kind of wish my sons didn't do sports, that they would have done other extracurricular activities, whatever it may have been, more volunteer work or whatever, because I think it would have fit better with them. And I think that a lot of people you get stuck in this is the way you're supposed to do it. And sometimes, like I said, you just have to not do it, like whether it's a certain sport or sports in general, or even an activity. Like, if you don't experiment with, even like my oldest son knew that he wanted to do mechanical engineering since he was like 6th grade. Like, what do you want to do? But once he got there, he wished he would have done computer science in college. Unfortunately, San Jose State was really impacted. Switching majors wasn't easy. So, but again, him not kind of experimenting with other things and not being willing to say, well, just because this is what I always wanted to do, that I was going to do, and maybe, objectively say, maybe I do want to change. So I think also just that letting go of what you've always done is not a bad.
Yeah, because a lot of times people think, oh, you're good at that. Keep doing it. Keep doing it because you're so good at it. But it's like they may not want to. Right. So it sounds like encouraging them to explore different things, but also being okay when they want to switch out of something and do something
Even if you are good at it, even if you do excel at it, if it's just not, if you're not driven to do it, or you just don't really have that passion anymore. But again, you're young. I mean, find out what really drives you. So yeah, I'd be willing to kind of let go as well, of things and perceptions.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Thank you both so much for taking the time to meet with me again and again. And chatting with me it was just so much fun. And for everyone listening, these are the Gen X guys. So make sure to look them up and listen to their podcast because it's even more fun than this conversation.
Well, way more random. Let's just put it that way. We got to, we talked about ADD on that one. We go off script. Well, actually, we don't even have a script. We have to have a script. You're off. No, it is. Actually.
That show is based on people with ADD. This is what would happen if someone with ADD was running a show, basically, is how it should be looked at.
Yeah. Oh, it's much worse if we weren't actually being recorded. So,
but it's a lot of fun banter and everything. I love it.
Well, yeah, that's been going on for decades with us.
Exactly. It's fun.
Yeah, we actually put a little bit more thought into our words, which maybe is a detriment. I don't know, but do appreciate you inviting us once again. It was fantastic. I always enjoyed chatting with you.
Of course. Thank you so much, and hope you have a great week ahead. Thank you both.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Parenthood Bites. We hope you found our episode informative and entertaining. If you're a parent in the tech world or know someone who is, we'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us at chow@parenthoodbites.co, and we'll be thrilled to add your experiences to our interviews. That's chow, CHIAO, @parenthoodbites.co. And to our potential sponsors out there, if you're a business or know of one that would like to support and partner with our podcast, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can also reach us at chow@parenthoodbites.co. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Until next time, take care and stay curious.